Stephanie Laing is the Emmy-winning co-executive producer and director of HBO Max's Made for Love, a sci-fi comedy drama that follows the fallout of a tech visionary secretly implanting an experimental chip in his wife's brain. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Stephanie, it's such a pleasure to have you here. My first question is, how were you first exposed to and introduced to Made for Love? Was it through the novel? Was it through your showrunner, Christina Lee? And how helpful was it to have the novelist, Alyssa Nutting, so involved in the process as you were putting the show together?
Oh, well, first, thanks for having me. I got involved really with Christina, right? And they'd already cast it. So Cristin and Billy and Ray were already cast. And I read the first few pages of the pilot and was in love, and just like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever read, actually. And it's dark and it's weird, and would have practically was like, please, 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 can I do this? And then outside of that, like, having Alyssa there was amazing. Just knowing that we were taking her novel and like taking such good care of it, but that the creator of it was actually there, it was incredible. And then obviously working with Christina was also amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the show is such an interesting hybrid of, as I said earlier, it's sci-fi, but it's also family drama, and it's also this kind of absurdist comedy. As the director for the majority of the episodes, what was your approach to really getting that tone right? Because I mean, I'm sure so much of that was already in the scripts, which you just said were, fabulous. But what was it like to kind of navigate that behind the camera?
It was very specific, I mean, it's a very tricky tone. And in terms of like performance wise, we played everything straight, and I had a lot of conversations with Ray Romano and Billy and Cristin, saying, don't play the joke, read it like it's a drama, or say it like it's a drama, and keep it grounded, because everything else was so heightened. And so it was just really important that everything felt very real. And in terms of, camera, we had a terrific DP, Nate Goodman. We shot anamorphic, and we really, I think, also, back to your first question, what was so great about Alyssa and Christina was that they trusted us to just play stuff in wides sometimes,
Mm.
and not cut. And there were several times when we would shoot a scene and all like and not even a traditional oneer, but like a really long oneer. And I would go to Christina and say, look, I don't want to cover it. And Christina and Alyssa would be like in tears, and I'd be like, oh, I guess I don't have to cover it. That worked. So really it was just about not being afraid to try something new. I think it's such an interesting storyline. It's unusual. It's different. And so I think the way we decided to approach it visually had to be the same. It was just, don't be afraid, jump off, and, protect the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the show is set really in two entirely different universes. We kind of have the real world where Hazel, who's played by Cristin Milioti, and her father, played by Ray Romano, live, and also this virtual reality hub that Byron, played by Billy Magnussen, kind of constructs, and they live in there in isolation for almost 10 years, or about 10 years. What was it like to kind of approach those two very different worlds as the director, especially trying to establish a kind of visual texture and language for each of these very different settings?
It was about color palette. Working with Jordan for the production designer, it was about wardrobe. Like, again, with Jen, I think everything was just so specific and very detailed. I think always, always the magic kind of lies in the details anyway, but for this even more so. And so it was also sound design. It was like, okay, what does it sound like when you're in the hub? What does it sound like when you're not? And what is Cristin, her character, wearing in the hub? It was very different from what she was wearing outside of the hub. So again, two very different approaches, again, with the same lensing approach. But I think we decided that Cristin would sort of be more in the center, in the hub, because she was having to play a role, and outside it was just a little more free.
Yeah, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but could you talk a bit more about working with Cristin and Billy and Ray? And also, I mean, the whole ensemble is terrific, but especially those three, who are not only the main characters, but also have such a great and rich background in both comedy and drama. All three of them have done so many wide-ranging projects. What was it like to help them navigate? I know you said earlier, just play the drama, don't play the laughs, but was there any moments where they really wanted to kind of lean into the comedy, or how did you really help them figure out when those right moments were to do that?
I think we created a safe place, right? And so we were we were free to play, and that goes back again to Christina and Alyssa. Like we had a very
Hmm.
safe set. It was very an amazing crew, and we were given the space to play, and HBO Max let us play, right? And so no one was afraid, and I think that's sometimes so rare. And listen, I mean, like Dan Backetall would anytime Dan Backetall was there with Noma, who are both incredible,
Yeah.
we knew there was going to be some improv and some things happening with them, or it would just be comedic. And then obviously Caleb with Billy, sort of pairing them up, and we would play. And that was the time we would go, okay, we can play with physical comedy here because it makes sense. And that was actually really, really fun working with the two of them. In the hub and kind of creating their relationship. With Cristin, we again, like I feel like I keep saying the word specific, but it was like your hub Hazel, your real world Hazel, and sometimes they met in both places, but Cristin is so incredible, that I would just say, look, can you just bring a little hint of hub Hazel here? And
Mm.
she would, and it was just like just a tiny little look of her eye, and she's incredible. And then of course, it's Ray Romano. I mean, it's amazing. It was also like really fun to work with him and Diane, and again, talking about playing something straight. It's like we really felt so much love for the synthetic partner. And I remember the last shot with her, again, like we were all kind of in tears when she kind of like, spoiler alert, gets like put in a box and the lid closes. And I
Mm.
think everyone on set was just like, oh, because we had just treated her with such care. So
Right, especially since I think I heard in one cast interview that she was modeled on Alyssa Nutting, the novelist. So I'm sure there was an added kind of layer of care in that respect. I
yeah.
want to dive in specifically to the very first episode and directing that, because I have to imagine, it was particularly thrilling, but also in many ways challenging, because you're grappling with so much different time. There's the kind of present day moment where Hazel is escaping from the hub. We have some flashbacks to her childhood with her father, played by Ray Romano, but also, kind of giving us all that context, but also maintaining the adrenaline of Hazel's escape, which is so exciting and so brisk. What was it like trying to juggle all of those different things that you needed to accomplish in a very short, pilot episode?
Yeah. Well, again, we have an incredible cast, right? So that was start there. And then we just took the time. I mean, we did a lot of this stuff during COVID, and, we worked 10-hour days. So we had to be really specific. And I really feel like, I did have like the best DP with me. And also I want to say like the best first AD, like we were such a team. And I think, we planned everything. I'm a big believer in kind of prep, and then it giving you a chance to kind of to have time to find special things when you're shooting, and really balancing both of those worlds. And the pace of it was just thought out really carefully and very meticulously in terms of how we were going to shoot it, quite honestly. And knowing in the edit how we were going to put it together so it would be seamless, and so you could follow along with the flashbacks and the moments in time but still feel like never get taken out of the story. So yeah, just very, very specific in terms of what we wanted, how I wanted to film it. Performance wise, we played a lot of we played with levels. Like sometimes it would be scream this one, or say this like you're joking, and really just making sure we had everything needed in the edit. Because yeah, as of it, I mean, you've seen it, it's not exactly the easiest tone to nail, but I really think that we did. So
Yeah, not at all. And speaking of seamless, could you talk a bit about handing over the reins to director Alethia Jones for 2 of the 8 episodes? I think she directed episodes 2 and 3.
yeah.
What was that like in terms of, did you have conversations about what, the look and the feel? Because those are some early episodes, but the continuity across all 8 is so seamless. What were those conversations like, and how did you two prep?
I mean, Alethea is fantastic. We actually worked on Dollface together, so I've known her for a while, and it's really, I have to say, so refreshing to be working hand in hand with another director on episodic. Like you just sometimes don't get to do that, or you don't get to, you don't get to know that person very much. And so it was really nice for me to be across all the episodes and to be there, with and for Alethea and to collaborate with her on her stuff. I mean, I shot some of the things in her episodes. She shot some of the stuff in my, we were kind of cross-board and mixed, but it was really, sometimes it's just so rare to be able to get to know another director on a show with you.
You mentioned a minute ago that COVID interrupted production. I'm just wondering, at what point in the series were you when production shut down? And what was it like coming back? I know, we all know now about the intense protocols and how successful it was bringing a cast and crew back, which is terrific. But where exactly were you in the process? And were there things you revisited, maybe in episodes that you had already finished that you went back to kind of in the new filming reality?
We didn't go back to things as much. We'd only finished a couple of episodes actually, so
Okay.
that when we weren't too far along, the good thing. I mean, I guess that's a good thing, right? In some ways, and I think what it did do, I think Cristin and Alyssa would say that it gave them sort of a chance to sort of evaluate where they were, what they wanted, and kind of continue to work on the material and elevate it. And for me, I ended up just having a lot of prep, which was great. So when we came back, I had we shot for 33 days, but I had a bunch of
Wow.
prep obviously before that. So it felt like more like we were gearing up to do a feature in a way. And I think yes, it's hard because of the protocol and everything, but it also was kind of a gift because we were able to schedule it all together. And because we shot it like a movie, we had sort of linking scenes and things like that. And it didn't feel like it was like end this one and start the next one. It sort of all flowed together and we were able to, like at the diner, obviously that's all in one episode, but film in one place and really plan it out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And certainly, I mean, the hub takes on, we all watched it during COVID because it was released far after the pandemic started to rage in the US. But certainly
Yeah.
looking at the hub and living in Hazel and Byron living in isolation in the hub certainly feels different from that point of view than if we were watching it pre-COVID.
I know.
Yeah, right. I'm wondering if was there a single scene across the 8 episodes or the 6 that you directed, or a single shot or a single sequence that you found particularly challenging to get right? And then also, was there what is the single shot or sequence that you're most proud of across all 8 episodes?
I would say some of the water work that we did was probably the most challenging, and sort of
Mm,
working with the CGI dolphin, et cetera, which was also equally amazing and rewarding, right? And I feel like, again, working with an incredible cast and you're in the water, so that I would say was probably one of the more challenging things, just the water stuff itself. Also given the COVID circumstances and then throwing, tank work on top of it. The one of the most well, there's two rewarding things for me. There's in the finale, the scene before she, when we don't know that she's, gonna poison or drug her father. She's it's a really, I think it's just a really beautiful shot, and it goes on. It's a winner, and it's like she goes back into the kitchen and she comes in with a beer, and they sit down and they're talking, and we don't cut. We just stay with them, And again, it's like because we shot anamorphically, we could, everything was playing in the one frame, so we didn't feel like we had to cut into it. And then obviously Cristin and Alyssa supported that, and obviously HBO Max and Paramount did as well. So I think there's a lot of emotion in that one scene because we never cut from it. And in definitely in the finale with the diner, just the way
mm,
we decided to shoot, by switching sides of the line or, playing with depth of field, so that whenever you came back to them in the diner sitting in the same place, you were never bored. You were always like, oh, here's the emotion of the scene. And I think for me, directing is in terms of moving a camera is really about only move it when it's emotional. Like whose point of view is it? And then it should move, and it should move tandemly with the emotion of the show. And obviously, the pilot obviously stands out to me just in terms of, the craziness of everything going on and you jumping into this world immediately. So I think, you know, proud of those things.
absolutely. Yeah, that's diner scene in the final episode. The performances are so incredible. Kristin's, but especially Billy's too, which is really the kind of first time we see Byron, kind of crack in that way. Really extraordinary performances in that scene.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk about working on this kind of sci-fi dystopian show, even though it's so much more than that. but with almost an entirely female creative team. It seems like a really extraordinary group of people, and also unique that such a kind of sci-fi show has an all-female, a showrunner, female directors, female writer, or writers. What was that like for you?
It was amazing. It was, again, it's like really truly a safe space, right? Everyone had the freedom to really to elevate with the material. The material was so good, so it just felt like everything kind of piled on to one another, and yeah, just it was super safe and really rewarding. And I can't tell you how many times like Christine and Alice and I, and we still joke about it, that we feel like we have a chip implanted in our brains between the three of us, because we just really under like we just I really felt like we knew each other. And sometimes they would come to give me a note, and or they were about to give me a note, and then I would do another take, and they're like, oh, that was, you just did our note. So I felt like we were all made for love, not to be no pun intended. Yeah, and our first AD, I mean, Lisa Satriano was just, she was incredible. And it was a very safe space, and also just really, really cool for women to be in sci-fi. I think,
Absolutely.
and as you said, like it's not that common. And we really thought about it a lot. We talked about it a lot between all of the women, just how it felt. It was so rewarding, but also so rare for women to get to do sci-fi, and it's very cool.
Absolutely. And finally, Gold Derby is an awards website, so I'm wondering, do you know what episode of Made for Love you've submitted for on the ballot? And if you do know, what went into that decision of picking that episode?
I do know we picked the pilot, um, because we really felt like, or at least I felt like, you needed an entry into the world, more than anything. And I
Yeah.
felt like, in terms of if you were voting for it, like I do, the finale is very dear to my heart.
Hmm.
But I think watching it in a vacuum, if you're a voter, you may not understand what as you said, it's the first time you understand, who Byron is. And so I think there's a lot of information there that wouldn't pay off as much if you hadn't watched the whole season. And I think one of the reasons, that's one of the reasons I chose the pilot, but also because I feel like, pilots are hard. And I think this one works on a lot, of levels. And I think you really care about the characters, and I think it really leaves you wanting more. I think it starts with you, it pulls you right in with her coming out of in the desert in the middle of nowhere. And I think you're sucked in and taken on a journey, and I'm very proud of that.
Stephanie Laing, congratulations on the first season of HBO Max's Made for Love, and thanks so much for chatting with Gold Derby today.
Thank you for having me.